I'm going to call this meeting to order. It's 8:12. Good evening, everybody.
So we're reconvening.
We are
Right.
reconvening from our earlier meeting upstairs. So, first on our agenda, approval of minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review them? If so, who would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the meeting minutes of December 9th,
A regular session?
regular session.
Thank you, Liza. Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
And then we have the executive session minutes of December 9th.
I'll make a motion to accept the meeting minutes of December 9th executive session.
Thank you. Second?
Second?
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Next, student communications. James, tell us what's been happening.
Not much.
Oh, I doubt that's true.
We just have final midyears next week, language started this week. The Hingham Got Talent has been postponed. I don't know when it will be, because they haven't come up with a date with that. I think February there's going to be a jeans drive, and we could win up to $10,000 for the school if we get the most jeans.
And do you know who the jeans donated to?
I forget
Okay,
who it
you'll
was.
give us, you tell us
Yeah.
about that next
I'll
meeting.
do that next meeting. And then there was like this, there was a orchestra or a choral thing. It's not national, it's not
Senior
central.
district.
It's the districts, there we go.
I heard that.
And that's all I,
Drama, I think the Drama Boosters Club had a big fundraiser on Saturday night. Very successful,
mhm.
very fun.
Yep,
Great,
that's it.
thank you very much.
Yep.
We'll see you next time.
Carol, could I jump in on that?
Sure.
On the topic of activities, I'd like to offer congratulations to the boys and girls track teams, plural, who last Sunday at the Reggie won both the boys and girls state MSTCA Division III relays. Congratulations to the kids, the parents, and the coaches.
Yeah, it was actually a very exciting time. I was
Second year in a row.
Second year in a row.
Quite impressive.
If I may, a second
Thank you,
congratulations.
you may.
Congratulations to a recent Hingham High School graduate, 2012, Gretchen Donlin. Gretchen and her skating partner, Andrew Spiroff, competed in the Olympic trials this past weekend in Boston. And they did well. They didn't do well enough to win, but they did very well. And congratulations to both.
I would add my congratulations as well. It's very exciting for them. All right, communications. Dot, you,
I think that, we have no communications.
okay. And any questions and comments from the audience? I say not. Okay, great. Moving right along to the superintendent's report.
I would suggest with respect to the hour, that we should move along
Okay,
to other
great.
things.
We'll move on to new business then. Thank you. Item 7.1, review of the proposed capital budget as presented by the Long Range Planning Subcommittee. Dennis, you going to take us down that path?
Yeah, I'm actually going to take us down a path that runs through John. Well, John put together an annotated capital items here, and rather than me doing part of it, and which may not be exactly how has here, I think I will let him take the lead here, and I will opine, as they say.
Excellent. Thank you, John.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dennis. In your packets previously, you had a very similar document. This was done last Thursday, and I'm constantly, during this period of time, I'm constantly tweaking the numbers as I get additional information. And then also, there were a couple of items on this here where I had article money that I just put down as a memo item on this so that we make sure that we ask for an article to have money transferred from the insurance account over $20,000 to come back to the operating budget to fund the boiler that we put into the Foster School this year, as well as the Gale inspection. So some of the monies in the columns have changed as well. I've also made some additional adjustments on window money for Foster School and PRS, assuming if we will have that discussion about the SOI and that next. But if we go for an SOI this year, then we need to make sure we ask for the money for the windows in the succeeding year, so I've sort of readjusted some of the columns. I'm not sure about the best way of how to go through all this, so I guess I'd throw it out to the committee to ask, how would you like me to approach this? What I've done here is I've put a description below each one of the items on what essentially the capital item is. We have a column here for 2014. Those are capital items that are in this year's budget. Some of them we have completed already. The largest one of this is the South School EMS, which I expect to be going out to bid probably within the next couple of weeks. Should have that bid spec probably pretty much drafted by the end of this week.
So in that regard, John, let me just jump in for a second, because as I think others are aware, tomorrow night we're going in front of the Capital Outlay Committee to propose this, and I think it's highly unlikely that it will be accepted in total. That would be a first, I think, wouldn't it?
Certainly would.
Right. So I guess the question is, we can go through by line item, but it'd be my suggestion perhaps that we just highlight the larger items and the ones that we think are most noteworthy, because chances are we're going to spend half an hour talking about items that may not be here in a week or two, and we'll certainly be reporting back to you before, obviously, you're asked to vote on a capital outlay. So, I mean, rather than going through sanding every floor and carpeting every area, I think it might be best to highlight some of the bigger dollar items and also some items that may not have been, that are new to this year.
You mean in terms of explanation?
Yes, exactly.
I would
Yeah,
agree.
and basically focus on 2015 as opposed to what's in the outer years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the one other thing I would, however, mention is, because you might not notice it otherwise, that on this year, we did put in a repair to the South Elementary School phone system, which was actually originally in a later year. The system is failing, and it had been put off over time. It has now started to fail. So we've actually talked to Capital Outlay. They've agreed to reallocate some funds so that we can do that this year. The town is also replacing its phone system, so we're piggybacking on that bid. Unfortunately, the initial bids may not be accepted, is what John tells me.
Yeah, they went out to bid, but they still haven't awarded the bids. And, if I'm talking to Steve Becker, there's a question about whether they will award or whether they want to go out to rebid. So I'm really uncertain as to all the details behind, that approach and what's going on with that bid right now. So, worst case scenario, they'll go out to rebid the job so that they can open the bids. I have a feeling the holidays may have got in the middle of it, and weather may have got in the middle of it, so they were afraid that they didn't get all the bids on time that they would have got. That's my sense, but I'm not sure from a factual standpoint.
I just want everybody to know, in case you hear about, or the people watching us hear about, that there have been issues at South Elementary. We're certainly aware of it. We've accelerated replacement of that system, and we're hoping to do it even during this year, whether it's possible to do it, during one of the school breaks, or whether we'll have to wait till the end of the year. It depends when the bid comes in and how this integrates with other things that are also in the bid.
Right, yeah.
I think,
Okay.
the only concern that I have, if we have to go out to bid, is that we're still able to make the change to get the new equipment for the middle school in a timely fashion. The middle school, Plymouth River, East School, and now South and Town Hall are all involved. Well, if we don't get a phone system to June rather than in February, that will be fine. But we need to make sure the middle school system, which is part of the package that the town is funding with money from the middle school technology budget, a middle school budget, that's a real concern for us, that get done.
I don't think that we're significantly delayed here. I think that that decision would probably be made very shortly, whether they'll accept a bid or whether they'll go out to rebid. You know, the bid's, it's really ready to go out again if it were to go out. It's had nothing to do with the specifications or anything.
Okay. Okay, did you have a question?
Is the plan tonight on capital to be informed of it, ask questions, and maybe make suggestions, so that when it's proposed, it'll be proposed then to Capital Outlay Committee tomorrow evening, and then we will vote on it at a future meeting? Is that, are we voting on this tonight?
No, we're not voting on it tonight.
We're not.
Well, I think we're discussing it.
Okay.
To provide some.
And whether or not to take the whole thing forward to capital, which is one approach, or to say,
Right.
no, we're not going to. Of course, if we don't take certain things forward, we'll never get them.
Or if you'd like to advance things, Dr. Ed, I think that would be appropriate with tonight's discussion as well.
Okay.
In prior years, timing was such that often we had to go to capital with just a long-range recommendation. And school committee didn't have a chance to see that before it went. So that's a point of trying to get that in this year. The timing of capital meeting was such that long range could meet and discuss, could bring it to you for any further refining or questions or whatever before going to.
You may remember that was part of my campaign platform for being chair of the Long Range Planning Committee, that I ensured you would have to look at this before we vote on it. Remember that,
All right.
right?
So why don't we start then, kind of following Dennis's suggestion? Just maybe school by school, any big ticket items or something new?
So well, let's just start with Foster with the $50,000 to restore that play shed. So now that price has gone up from previous years, but last year I did an evaluation of the structure of it. You know, and the structural engineer made a few recommendations, and then also with the end-of-year funds, I said, write us a spec for it. So I spent another $5,000, $6,000 to have the spec written so that we can put their specification right into a front-end bid document and get a real good price. I think this 50 is more realistic, somewhere around $14,000, $15,000 for the painting, the structural $14,000, $15,000, and then the siding anywhere between $15,000 and $20,000. And I think, you know, by sprucing that up after we have done the basketball courts and stuff, and I've got some other money in here for Foster grounds. By sprucing that outdoor campus up, I think it'll be a real nice area for the school and for the community. So, you know, I'm very much in favor of that. Going down, as your eyes scan down, the $122,911, that's for the a feasibility study for the SOI, which we'll discuss later. Okay.
But John,
Go ahead.
the Foster, the 50,000 is in
15?
16. I thought we
No,
put it in.
50,000. No, 50,000 for the Foster, restore the play shed. It's down in the middle. Down in the middle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I put line items there. Maybe I should say line item 14, 15, around that area. Line item 14.
Yeah, you're
I've
right.
tried to get lines on this, and I'm sorry I was not able to do that, but I did get the line numbers on the side here. And then, you know, line 30 is the feasibility study. Next, you know, jumping over next to the line 50, which is the high school curb and field for the sidewalk grading. That's a leftover from the road is going to be done this year, and in order, I wanted to make sure that some department, whether it be the school department or the town department, has funding for the curb that goes along the brand-new field complex. So I've put it here in this budget just to make sure that there's a request for it. And then the ovens, we have some kitchen issues where many of our ovens at the high school, and I think at PRS mainly, the ovens aren't holding temperatures. The ovens are about 40, 50 years old. So it's time to think about replacing the cafeteria equipment. So you see that in line 53. A new item from the last time that I met with the Long Range Planning Committee that I just added in here was item 59, or 58, the high school removal of an underground oil tank. Now, this just has to do with a non-compliance notice we got from the DEP, which was dated back in 2004, which apparently was never resolved. And this came to light to us based from the Green Ribbon application that they're going on at the high school. So, until we get this resolved, the green ribbon application sort of stays on hold, but needless to say, we should, and what it has to do is getting the boilers certified. Apparently, the boilers, if they're over 10 MBTUs, which is a very large boiler, and the high school has 2, they have to be permitted and accepted or certified by the DEP. We never got that done. So we're in the process of getting that done now, and we have got a consultant in looking, because they have to fill out the numbers and check the admissions and see if these boilers certified. Right now, we burn just gas at the high school, but they're dual fuel burners. So there's also an oil tank there that would feed these. We have about 5,000 gallons of oil in that tank, okay? And if we wanted to pull the trigger and say, hey, let's burn oil because it's more economical, realistically, we could. I don't know where the emission standards are gonna come out. If it turns out that oil isn't going to be an acceptable burn, then probably what we should do is just say, hey, we're burning gas from the rest here on. We're no longer going to have the dual fuel burners, and what we should do at that point is remove that oil tank. And we'd burn it down before that.
Where is it
So-
located?
I believe it's out in Pleasant Street. I believe it's out underground.
I think where it is, that if you go down the driveway along the side of the building
Yeah.
from Pleasant Street,
Okay.
and then there's the immediate right bend,
Right.
right there, because my office was down there when I was a math and science chair, and I'm pretty sure that's where the tank is. Right, there's a kind of a little patio area, if you will, with a staircase up,
Staircase.
and right above the retaining wall. I think that's where it is.
Yeah. And we'll know more about the emissions during this process, but I just wanted to call your attention to that. That's sort of a new item that I've had even since the last meeting at the Long-Range
So the
Planning Committee.
removal of the tank, is that the $40,000 number?
That's, yeah, and it's just an estimate at this point, Dennis.
But it's not leaking or anything?
No, not leaking. We'd expect that there'll be no remediation. It's a fiberglass tank, it's,
You say it's 5,000 gallons?
we have 5,000 in, I think it's a 10,000 gallon tank.
Okay. So, hard to know what ultimate cost would be if we had to pull the tank, because you never know what happens when you pull the tank, or whether there's been a leak. And
I
if
think
there
it's a
has been
fairly
leak,
new tank with the renovation.
Right, I'm just saying, environmental costs are really hard to
Yes.
anticipate until you actually get in the ground to do something, so.
Right.
Just,
I know, yeah, and so I put the 40, I know, I had an oil leak at my house. It was a lot of money.
and then you
Hundreds
have
of
to
thousands of
excavate the
dollars.
soil and replace the soil, and it gets
Do we
expensive.
have any
Take down the
schools,
oil and
do we have any schools that are still using oil?
Foster is using oil, and right now middle school uses oil, but the new middle school will be
So I'm just
gas.
wondering, does it make any sense
And
to
the
pump
depot
that
uses-
out of there and take it over to Foster, rather than burning it at the high school where it's less expensive to burn gas?
I
don't
think
know how
we
you do that,
yeah,
but,
I think we just burn it down at this point, Dennis, because then, so if we don't burn, it's our energy, it's an asset that's sitting in the ground, really, so we burn that, and
Well,
it would
that's not
lower
fine,
our energy
but
bills for
if-
this year.
If gas is less expensive, which I believe it is now, if we could pump that out and take it over to Foster, again, I
We-
don't
we
know
coulda
how- I
got
don't know
that
if it's
oil.
even feasible, but it's just a thought.
I'm not sure how many years that oil's been in the tank. Paul burns it periodically just to sort of keep the jets clean, but we
Okay.
could have got that oil real cheap. So, but you're right, it's an asset that's appreciated in value most likely, but I think it's probably, rather than trying to transport it, I think we're
Okay.
better off burning it.
And I don't know
Yeah.
how good that stays after too many years.
Put a little stable in the tank there.
Yeah,
Well,
it still burns.
we're gonna find out.
Well, it does still burn. I mean, Paul does, he does use the jet, so periodically. Then let's go down to, so you have other items here too. Item 74 is the PRS kitchen equipment that I spoke of. And then item 78 is the feasibility study for new windows at PRS. So both of those have to do with the SOI, which we'll talk about later. Okay?
And the
Proceeding.
difference in costs, John, is because of the number of windows, or?
Yeah, it's smaller structure, and I think, and keep in mind, the feasibility is based on what I expect the windows to cost. And the window cost that I have in here came from, I think, a 2012 3 or 4 or 5 study that had an estimate, and then I've grossed it up 3% over the years to come up with what I think may be a range, but I can't even confirm that the range that I have for the windows is correct. You know, we're, in Foster, I think it's showing in 15, in 16 for Foster at $1.3 million, and it's showing in 16 right now at PRS for $700,000. So it was based on a study, one of the asset studies that I took from previous years with an estimate that we got maybe perhaps from Gale or AI3, and then the prices have been grossed up 3% per year since then to come up with that estimate. So the estimate is just an estimate. Okay? Let's see. Another notable item is this, item 74, which is the PRS, excuse me, 76, the PRS ceilings. So the office ceiling, if you've ever been in the PRS office, the ceiling is very low, and it has lights that are attached below the ceiling. It's not recessed. So it makes the office look very, very small, plus the ceiling is very old. So that 15,000 item there is to rip out the ceiling and put new recessed and efficient lights in, and, you know, it'll give it a better look and raise it up. The 103, line 103 is copiers, that's the annual. You'll note that the annual for 14 is gone because I took that money in 14. This is line 104, 103, 104. Okay, 25,000. That's now, 25,000 that was in there is now shown in the phones for South School. Okay?
Can I go back just to 76 for a moment?
Sure.
With the ceiling, the lighting, illumination upgrade at Plymouth River School, are we precluded from taking advantage of some of these incentives that you see all the time from the electric company, where they will pay for the ballast and so on?
Yeah, no, along with this, I bet this project here would qualify for a rebate from Hingham Municipal Light, probably to the tune of about $4,000. So it could be less than the 15, you know, once we got the rebate. So we get it. HMLP does have rebate programs, and any energy project that we do, they're limited though, you know. So we may get, you know, 1 per meter. So for a meter, we have the option of about $4,000 on a rebate. Sometimes
We're using a different electric company at the office, and we get these all the time.
I know. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're very attractive.
Well, that's the government money. The government's giving the utilities money and saying, you know, do these projects, the federal government for energy efficiency. So they're really dying to sort of get rid of the money. HMLP is a little bit different organized, you know. I'm sure they're getting some subsidies, but not nearly to the extent of National Grid or the other big carriers.
We actually used to, many years ago, we bought the ballast with a loan from the Wilder Fund, and then paid it back with the savings by replacement of the ballast.
So 104, 105 gatehouse renovations, we've been putting that off for quite a few years. You know, and the price of that is just going up as we go along, you know, from $25,000 to $30,000 to $40,000. We'll give it, not even a great facelift, but, you know, be able to replace the windows, new carpet, and, you know, give it a paint job and sort of spruce it up a bit. It needs some new electrical work as well. So I think that's important. We've put that off for a couple of years. I think it's important that we sort of get to that project this year. I have the instructional equipment. If you look, this is line 108, and there's a separate schedule for instructional equipment that the directors and the principals put in, and then I just aggregate it all into an instructional equipment line. It's down 28,000. That's because I've separated out area carpets, which I think we need about $11,000 to $12,000 a year on an annual replacement plan to replace those annual carpets, you know, based on a 3 to 5 year schedule for the most part, depending on how grubby they get. You know, we clean them every year, we take care of them, we vacuum them, but They're just, frankly, they just get old and they have to be replaced.
These are the area rugs in the elementary.
The area rugs in the elementary
So
school.
now is that in the system-wide, or is that at each school?
No, I put them in system-wide,
Okay,
Dennis,
fine.
because, rather, I don't want to have to tie down and say, I'm giving you this many and you this many. I want to, put them into schools based on the need and where the worst schools.
Okay, so that's the one down, back on 136 then, you're saying, is the area run thing?
Yeah, if it's in the system, right. I have some vehicles in here, based on a vehicle replacement plan where I calculate mileage. We have, in it, I have a new maintenance vehicle in here for $38,000. We have trucks that are getting old, Paul's trucks is very, very old, and if the budget calls for another, maintenance person, we'll need a vehicle anyway, so I think that's an important item, because if it dies, we'll have to buy one during the course of the year anyways. We do need another wheelchair van as well. Our wheelchair van is sort of up for renewal too, based on the schedule. That's item 112. And then we get into the technology requirements. So we got this park assessment and technology, and there's some additional detail on the technology schedule. You looked at, it's projected out over the next couple of years.
John, I had a question on
Sure.
that. In the sheet on the capital planning technology, it said, under the park readiness, note there is a $50,000 placeholder in the current 5-year capital plan.
Yep.
It appears that approximately $35,000 more will be needed.
Right.
Where does
So
the
in last,
50 show up?
in last year's, the 50 was there.
Not
So
in
this
our plan,
35,
in
you
their
see,
plan.
yeah.
Okay, so we
Well,
don't have to,
We had one there, Liza, so it would be in the warrant, but this line that we have here for the 113, 114, with that 35,000, last year that was 50. Okay, but it was the only number that we had in there, so if you look, we got the
you
50.
saved the 50 placeholder, okay.
Yeah, if there was a placeholder, it was in the warrant, but now we got
In
35 plus,
FY14?
Yeah.
In FY14?
Yeah.
that's right.
So last year when we went to capital outlay, we were just starting to talk about this. We didn't know what it was going to be, so we talked about a placeholder for next year, and that was the 50,000.
Right, but when the 85 is really the combination of the 2 years, the 35 plus the 50, that's what Park's gonna cost us, that's what,
Right.
so that's where Dot said, apparently it's gonna cost 35 more, but not 50 this year, it'll be 35 this year, 50 next year.
So Dennis will make sure the capital outlay committee
Understands it
remembers
already.
that 50 was there.
And it's 50 projected again for the following year, even though I know we're not talking about the following.
Yep, it's 35 plus 50, so now we know, Dot's done the analysis that says it's about $85,000 for park readiness.
Wait a minute, didn't you say it was 50 in the current budget year?
So we
35,
Put
So-
50,
Right, so we put in a
Away
$50,000
last
placeholder.
Okay.
Because we didn't know what it was. Now we're saying that in reality, we believe it's going to be $85,000.
I see.
Of which we
Oh.
told them about
50
50.
got moved
35
forward
replaces
2
Right.
years.
50,
Yeah.
and then 50 next
Okay,
year.
Yep.
got it.
So it's 85.
So if you looked in the warrant in their schedule, you'll see
Right.
park readiness there, and there's a 50,000 item for 15 in the last year's warrant. But this year, that warrant will change, and it'll show, 2-year progression, 35, then 50. That good, Liza? No?
Well, no, I don't know what the standard formula for working with capital outlay, so as long as, at the end, capital outlay, if they agree with this, then it's 85.
Right.
Total.
Yeah,
Right.
over 2 years.
Yeah.
With their
We'll have to
scheduling
remind them
out
next
5
year.
years, that's
Yeah.
what it
Beyond
is.
this year, we have to
Yeah.
remind them that we really need that
Right.
50 next year.
Well, last year
as
was
well.
it was so new and amorphous, we just said, okay, placeholder,
Right.
and we'll kick it out.
Yeah.
Now we have a more concrete number, so we can say, oh, so now we really know what it's going to cost, and it's going to be in
Over
2
2
years, and this is the amount, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So there are 3 vehicles here.
There, three vehicles here this year, yep, so there's not, and there's another van here, so, right, so we got a 38,000, 48,000, and just a regular van. We're receiving our van that we bought this year, probably next Thursday. So, and that cost 27,559, so this 30,000 for a regular van is right. And the vans are done by mileage. I do calculate the mileage, and I look at the age of them, and and, see, if you look next year, we're scheduled for 3. So it's important, I think, that we continuously sort of buy these and sort of upgrade the fleet, or else we'll face a year when all of a sudden we need 12. Roof repairs, all buildings, just a standard that we should put in. The item 128 is the fire alarm monitoring in all buildings. We're estimating 10 buildings, $5,000 of capital equipment each. And then, when we get into the budget discussion next week, there's other monies that are embedded into the operating budget to cover the cost of the telephone lines that will be required to make that work, plus the alarm monitoring service that will need to be on the other end of those telephone lines. Okay?
Now, is that coordinated with the phones that we were talking about earlier? We were talking about all
Has to be a
schools?
separate phone line
Dedicated.
for a monitoring system.
Right. Yeah, the phone system is more the equipment and the voicemail and the
Oh, I know
stations.
it'll be a dedicated line.
Yeah, but the phone system that we've been talking about
Right.
is, well, for South School, actually, it's new Cat 5 wiring. It's new stations and physical phones and new voicemail system and intercom system. But the actual lines that come to Verizon could be the same lines. These alarm monitoring services will require additional lines from the telephone company to be brought to the location, copper lines, in all likelihood, so that when the alarm gets in trouble, it calls out over a copper line, goes to the alarm service, then the alarm service does their thing.
So it's a significant cost, needless to say, for us,
Yeah.
because we have multiple buildings. I mean, it's all town departments, but DPW really has only one building unless they choose to put this in one of their unused buildings. And a library is one building, and then this building.
Yeah.
So on the town side, the total cost is less. And I'm not
So
sure
this
about the fire station. Is going to take care of its own buildings, I'm hoping.
They probably want us to take care of their building.
So, but it is
Yeah.
a significant cost, and I'm not aware, I haven't, only see the budget presentations to the selectmen on TV occasionally, so I'm not sure whether that's come up yet in any of the other departments and how they're handling it in their budgets.
John, the thing that you were talking with Dennis earlier tonight, that is going to go back out.
Maybe a
For
little
several
separate.
schools. What does that include?
It's the phone system.
Phone system?
Whole
It-
replacement.
Yeah, for us, it would just be line item 8586, which is the $25,000 now in the fiscal year 2014, which is the phone system replacement for South.
Okay.
Town budget will cover here, Plymouth River, East School, and as part of the same project, middle school funding, the middle school. So the only money that we have to worry about is the South money.
So two different things. Part of the overall town-wide upgrade of its phone system, and then a specific problem we've been having at South that needs attention, and capital outlay was good enough to say, go ahead and move money from this place to that place and get it
But we
done.
have in the out years, that leaves us with Foster and high school with aging systems, and that we have
I guess
to,
what I'm saying is if we have to pull wires, it'd be nice to pull them all at the same time, whether it's for this project or that project.
yeah, I'm not sure it's about pulling wires, though.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
We've come around that corner before, yeah.
When you say, you mean within a building, or you're
Yeah.
talking, yeah.
Outside, the copper wire, that's a piece of cake. I'm talking about if we're going to be pulling wires at South Elementary.
South Elementary, we're going to have to pull wires,
Yeah,
because
is it
it's
tied
Cat
in?
3 right now, it's gotta be Cat 5 or
Not a-
Yeah,
above.
but the others are not.
Yeah.
So-
We have to put the fire alarm at the same time.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, the fire alarm's it's gonna go into someplace. There'll be certainly wire for the fire alarm, wires as well. It's just, and then they bring it to the building. So typically, it's the point of access, so the network interface into the buildings where the telephone company drops everything off, and then we make wires to there. And that's probably where the alarm, the monitor and alarm service will be as well, so. 131 is the capital, that's the baseline capital request. Replacements, testing, small testing of new technologies and stuff like that. Joe's basic budget to make sure that our technology infrastructure in the system keeps up for the year.
And Joe did submit today to go to capital with tomorrow night, the actual items that he would propose to buy out of that.
Yep.
One of them, for example, is new computers for the lab at East School, and then those computers can go elsewhere.
134 is maintenance equipment, outdoor and indoor, so mowers and line stripers and other equipment that's essential. Lots of times that's been covered through the field revolving account, but, since the revenues have been down this year, and plus two, we have, some reserve for the cash flow situation. I haven't said I'm going to purchase that out of the field revolving, so I think we should make that request. Some good equipment that will enhance productivity. We talked about the carpets. 138 is Building 12 roof leak remediation and ceiling repair. So we're thinking, Building 12 is structurally okay in the classroom where we are right now, but the ceiling has got some leaks in it. So we should really replace that ceiling and perhaps put a tarp covering above it to make sure that no new water gets down to the ceiling so that it would flow somewhere as we wait for a more permanent solution in the space area in that whole, Bear Cove area. Whether it be a new building or something, or, how they're going to structure that.
The reality is, if you look up at 123, 24, and 25, 26 relate to building 179, there's going to be a town-wide conversation about what happens with those buildings, and we'd like not to spend any money that's not necessary, but this money at Building 12 really could cause some issues if we don't do something because it may be a year or two or three before something happens there.
Yep. 143, system-wide milk coolers. The milk coolers that we have in the schools were purchased from Bradley's. It was a Bradley's closeout, and they're starting to fail, so, this is...
We're not talking about like a special they had one week. We're talking about
Yeah, I know. I think it was from their cafeterias or something. It's like sort of, fixtures, equipment, so it's, Kim has said they're going, so she's,
So just think Bradley's became Ames, and Ames became whatever, and now it's Hingham.
Right.
John, I have one question, going back to item 133.
133, yes.
Line 133, under technology enhancements,
Yeah,
cost
if
of
you-
technology plan for park, how does that relate to the previous expenditure?
Well, if you, in your packet,
separate
you also
document.
have a separate document that we're going to go over about that technology plan.
All right.
And so that relates to the things other than park that we would recommend being funded this year.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I know I went through this really quick, but so the total is 1.1 million, 1,186,623 for the items that I currently have listed right now in fiscal 15.
And as we said earlier, the idea is after tomorrow night's capital outlay meeting, this is likely to be winnowed down somewhat, and then we will come back to you and provide a revised listing as to what a recommendation is before,
Great.
which you would most likely vote on. One thing that, and again, I know that you guys have not had a chance to look through all these pages as well, but I would just draw your attention to lines 839 and 8384, will both have to do with kitchen floors. One's in South and the other's at the high school. If you could just, John, maybe just mention those things, because I really think it's a safety issue. And capital outlay always talks about safety as their number one priority, so, and these are both out in, fiscal year 2018.
Right.
So you want to...
Yep. So both of those items are floor issues at the cafeteria and the kitchen area. They're tile floors, and when they get wet, they get slippery. I'm told that the south actually weeps at times, so it gets slippery, so it can be dangerous. And, for staff to slip or so. To alleviate that, we use mats, and, people are careful walking around. I think that they should be done. I'm not sure exactly how they'd be done. But it's one of those things where they're working right now, the mats are been in place, and employees are careful. But at some point, we should pull a trigger. If we wanted to push them up, we could pull the trigger.
Yeah, again, it's a little hard to say whether, it should, I guess I want to just bring it to your attention. Let's see where we end up after tomorrow night,
Yeah.
perhaps, because, this is something of a zero-sum game. It's not like they're going to say, okay, we'll give you another $31,000. Like they do that, it would be, take $31,000 for something else. I think we ought to see where we stand, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention.
I would be hopeful with some type of coating to do it, because they're tile floors, and you look at them, and just moving the equipment out and getting that area cleaned and a new floor, it's,
I'd like to speak to the floor at the kitchen at South. I did a tour of South recently and spoken to people in the kitchen. The problem is the kitchen at South is on grade, and it's condensation that comes up. And in certain weather conditions, they have to mop the floor, and they frankly put rugs down. Now, the staff is versed in this, and they duck walk when it's wet. But the issue, of course, is the kids, and they put out mats, and they do mopping. And it's a situation that, very frankly, we need to deal with.
What's the difference between the kitchen floor and the cafeteria floor? Is the kitchen floor just more?
well, the cafeteria floor is like
It's a
is
different
a
material.
VCT tile,
Right,
and the
yeah.
other is a ceramic,
Oh,
like a ceramic
okay,
tile.
all right.
And also, you probably have variances in the temperatures.
Right.
In the
Yeah.
two rooms.
Yeah.
Sure.
Cooking in the kitchen, and then
So you get the
You know,
condensation.
the bottom line issue is that if every year we get less than half what we ask for, you get to a point where we may only be able to fund the things that are, we can call attention to the fact that it's a safety issue, but we could also get to the point where the half of what we need number only covers the things that are emergency. So it's a challenge to, half of what we need just doesn't work.
Right.
And you look at the other things we're asking for, they're needed.
Be pretty high priority for
Yeah,
other
yeah,
reasons, maybe not
that's the problem.
safety, but
So again,
for
I
other
just want to
reasons.
bring it to your attention. I appreciate that, your comment said, having firsthand experience with it, but,
Should I push them up to 16, so at least we sort of try to make them a priority for next year, or?
well, if our argument is it's a safety concern,
Yeah.
I think we should.
Yeah.
Because I think it's something we talked about last year,
Right.
and the issue continues, and it is a real safety concern.
Yeah.
You could even make the argument for including it in the current year.
Yep. But, we could put it in the current year, and then, because the next conversation we'll have is what are we cutting?
Right, I mean, but here's the thing, and I think this has to be part of the
Yeah.
message to capital outlay that we'll share tomorrow night. We talked about, and we talked about with them before, is, folks in this town have mentioned to us on many occasions that they're concerned about the quality of maintenance of the school facilities. And we have 10 buildings.
Hello.
Andy knows the size and talk about how many square feet and how many people use them on a daily basis and what kind of wear and tear, and whether it's roofs or floors or mechanical equipment or windows or what have you.
Leaking freezers.
Right.
Yeah.
So we need to take care of these facilities so that they not only are older facilities, so we can get more years out of them, but our newer facilities, so that we can keep them newer longer. And they're an investment, they're a capital investment in our facilities. And we happen to control the largest number of town facilities. It is what it is, but that should equate to a larger portion of the capital budget. And in a year where we're looking at likely, I hope, using the full $2 million on capital, if not more, then we should get a significant chunk of that to address, not only things that we need to maintain, those things that I mentioned, but also the emergency items and the safety concerns, because other departments talk about safety and they get them addressed.
And you could certainly make the argument, I think, that since we're self-insured for workers' comp, one slip and fall there is likely to cost us as much as fixing the floor.
I think we need, I certainly agree with, we need to make capital outlay aware, because after all, they do the relative allocations. But the real issue is that capital outlay doesn't get enough, and that other groups determine what they have to allocate. So the message needs to go wider than simply to capital outlay.
So again, it sounds like there's some sentiment to moving this up. The question is, do we move it up to this year, or do we just call their attention to it this year and put it in next year? What's the thought?
If it's a safety issue, I would move it up to this year, knowing that, okay, they might push it off to next year, but to me, if it's a safety issue, I don't want to see it as fiscal 18. That to me is like, it's not a real urgent safety issue. If it's a real urgent safety issue, yeah, let's put it this year. If we can remediate it with rugs and they're dealing with it. But if it's really an issue and we don't want the workers' comp kicking in, then we have to alert them to that.
Move it up. I'll move it up. We'll throw it in this year.
Yeah, so let's move those two items up
Okay.
to the current year, or
Yep.
to
And when
15.
you say this year, you mean?
15.
15, for 15, right. How about other
The
thoughts?
only other suggestion I would make, request I would make, is the 6 schools, I take the middle school out of the mix and I take East out of the mix, which leaves the other 4. And I'd like to see the building repairs and improvements column, which I'm just focusing, I'm sitting here line 80 at South, because that's what my eye went to.
Right.
And I see fiscal year 16, I would like to see funds put in all 4 of those schools' budgets for fiscal year 15.
Well, the reason it's not in 15 is because once those are like placeholders in the out years. So in 15, we've presumably identified the building repairs and improvements we're doing in 15.
Specific items,
The
yeah.
specific items. So you understand what I'm saying?
Okay.
So for instance, if you look down here, just what we just talked about, it didn't happen to be in this case, but if we had put in the new kitchen floor, that would have been one of the building repairs and that is one of the building repairs and improvements that last year showed as a $50,000 item in South School. We're saying now that $50,000 is allocated out. And again, it's not going to be exactly $50,000 every school, but that's why, so the current year we're now budgeting for, you won't see a placeholder for that, but we do have it in the out years because we know we want people to know, we don't know where that is right now, but next year, we'll know where the 50,000 is for South School, that has to be done in FY16.
And another thing to keep in mind, so you took out middle school and East, you can't really take out East anymore.
Right.
So we're 5 years out on East School, and we've already had a number of maintenance and repair issues that have been costly. The elevator on more than one occasion, the controller in the cafeteria,
yeah.
the air handlers, something we're dealing with. There's a few other things. So next year, 6 years out, we really have to start putting a placeholder for, the elevator repair one was $13,000. What was that? Switch was $3,000 for this little tiny
Yeah.
switch
Right.
that controls the temperature in the kitchen. I mean, we have to start thinking about that school as well, because not everything, warranties are pretty much gone.
Yeah, we had
That's why in East
the
and
chillers
East at
go,
16.
right, the chillers go at
Chillers, yeah.
12,000.
East in
Yeah.
16 is 25,000, and then it bumps up to 50
Right.
along with the other schools.
And with these two, interesting that we, as we're talking about East, and I'm not sure one way of handling that might be to say, next year, that we need $25,000 for East, and we don't know what's going to go wrong.
Right.
Because, the repairs are expensive. The chillers would have been $22,000, but fortunately, we got the engineer that spec'd out the air handle went to the company and said, if you don't do something and cut this bill down, I'm not gonna spec you out anymore. So they gave us a $10,000 break, so we did so it was $12,000 for 2 chillers, but still, it was $12,000. That's a lot of money for us. The elevator was $13,000.
The other cost is the doors, the hinges on the doors.
The hinges on the doors, that's right.
It seems like
Yeah.
newer equipment is more costly
Very
to fix
expensive.
or replace. Kind of like when the
Yeah.
electric
And
goes
also
in a
doesn't
German
last
car.
as long.
Right.
It's really expensive.
It all has embedded technology, and whenever you do it, it's like right off the bat, it's
Yeah.
expensive, so.
Well, again, I think we need to have that discussion with them, but again, it's a little hard if it's a capital budget to say, we need to put 25,000 in without identifying the items, just saying they're gonna be there. Maybe we ought to put 25,000 in our operating budget, as a repair type item in that case. Again, I don't know the
Right,
answer.
well, I mean, we do have money in the operating budget to repair things, but we're not expecting big
Right, I
items
understand.
like that, And it seems like, Dot and I sign the POs, and everything's $2,000-3,000, You see something at $1,500, oh, good, that's cheap,
It's like going to the body shop, right?
Yeah.
I would think that it would be good to have a discussion about 2 other items, and that one of those things is the curbing, to be clarified. There should only be 1 item in the town budget, and perhaps another department has put it in, or should. The other thing is the fire alarm. How are the other departments handling that? And would it be more efficient for us to have a single item that's a town-wide item for that, rather than a school only? Because that was a decision that was not made by us, and it's a town-wide decision, and perhaps there should be a town-wide allocation of that cost. So there's $100,000 that, could be a swing, that would be very important to us.
Okay. And so if tomorrow morning, capital planning likes to have this in advance, so I was going to give a copy of, I'll make the adjustments and then give the copy to Jean Montgomery so that she can get it to the capital outlay before the meeting tomorrow night, if that's okay with you folks.
And do you have Joe's thing to go with it? Or-
Yes, I got Joe's thing, yep, I can provide that as well.
Anything else on capital? So you'll get all the revisions to us tomorrow?
Yes,
Great.
yep.
Is Joe coming tomorrow night?
Joe and Paul Field will
good.
both be there tomorrow night.
Okay. So 7.2, the MSBA SOI process. So it's been a while since we went through this process for a statement of interest. And not that we're going through it now, but it's something that we had to start talking about. We were anticipating the MSBA notifying us that there was something opening up, and sure enough, it came a couple weeks ago. And it has a short window for application, I think February 14th, right?
Is that typical, such a short window?
Yeah, it really is,
Because it's an
Yeah.
accelerated program, it's supposed to be for things that are urgent, that need to be taken care of, as opposed to a building which you can look out, a longer period of
They
time.
don't get back to you until,
right.
No.
MSBA likes a lot of lead time for themselves.
Yeah, right.
it's like 9 months.
Yeah, we get, 2 weeks to do it, and they get months.
It's better,
It's a government agency
it's
after all.
better than Title IX or whatever, right?
Yeah, well, that's true.
So-
No news from them is good.
So the context of this, obviously, John mentioned it earlier, and Dennis, you may have before I came in, the windows that need to be done at Foster have needed to be done for a number of years, and also at PRS. And when we met at Long Range, we talked at length about, whether it made sense to jump into this process, whether we should submit for one or both projects simultaneously. How would that be received by the MSBA? Would they ask us to choose like they have in the past? And then we talked a little bit about, the relative value of doing a significant window replacement in each of the two buildings compared to one another. The value of doing it in a PRS, built in 1968, the layout that it has, versus Foster, built in 54, I think, early to mid-50s, with just a completely different layout, having its own issues and needs, and whether it made sense under the circumstances to move forward. And we talked a little bit about also, looking at Foster long-term. We put $7 million into those two schools over the last several years in an effort to breathe, new life into them and get more years out of them. Now we're, a number of years into that new life that we breathed. I would argue that money is a little bit more evident in PRS than it is in Foster, only because of the nature of the two buildings compared to one another. And I think Foster probably had greater needs and continues to have greater needs and broader needs. And how the MSBA would look at putting an investment of windows into a school like Foster if maybe there were some other issues. Because part of this program is, the facility's got to be otherwise sound and no really other significant issues that need to be addressed, because they expect the investment to have a useful life. I think in the Windows case, probably 20 years.
I think so.
I understand from the program. So it's a program of boilers, roofs, or windows, and they expect a useful life of at least 20 years of the investment if they're going to contribute toward it in form of reimbursement. So we talked about the relative value of one school versus the other going forward, maybe starting to think about long-term plans, looking at Foster, not saying, okay, let's do something now, but just starting to talk about it and think about it. Andy, did you have any thoughts? Dennis, do you want to?
I think this is very simple. I think we should apply for the SOI on both schools, in my opinion, because as the way I understand it is, if you apply for the SOI, then you have to do a feasibility study. So that will actually give us a good idea of where the building stands. And I just, there is a reimbursement part, so you get some money. But, it was 6 years ago, 7 years ago, we started building this life in. So I'm more in favor of doing it, just because I think it's worthwhile. The tough question, as you just said, is Foster. PRS is a good building. Foster's there's more challenges with, but at least for PRS, definitely do it. And I think we should go down the path for the other one, but I don't know what you were going to say.
And you say definitely do it on PRS because you think based on its layout and its newer age, there's more value to put into improving that because it'll give it even more.
When I toured the building with John, I think it was maybe Paul Fields a couple years ago, it was a good building. I mean, the hallways are wide,
Yep,
the
it's good
classrooms
building.
are well situated. The problem that Paul or John or maybe someone else, Randy they were saying that it's the window walls that were causing the problem. I know one of the tough things is, and Dr. Gallo's been very vocal about it, is the enrollment issue. Are we going to have declining enrollment? I'm not going to, I don't have a crystal ball, but I don't really see enrollment going down much. I don't really ever see us going back to 3 schools. So, because, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't PRS like 700 kids?
Yeah.
And now it's
Yep.
down to 450. So just when I think about those numbers, we're always going to have a 4th school. So, right, bottom line is, unfortunately, with government and this stuff, things take a long time.
Sure.
So we might as well start it now. Might not come about till 2020, but we might as well have the conversation now.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. One thing just to keep in mind is, so we're still trying to finish up the middle school project, right? That was a huge undertaking, continues to be a huge undertaking, and I think particularly, when we look at that and say, okay, what we did to ramp up to get going for that, get the approvals, get the money, now we're into construction, we're almost done with construction, but really a lot of work is left to be done, and that's the transition. And that's going to be a huge amount of work coming forward. Then you look at the Fields project, and that was a huge, time-consuming project that is not quite done yet, but almost. Are we prepared for another
It's interesting
project,
you say,
even a study?
It's
I don't know.
interesting you said that, because I was thinking about this the other day, because when we had our long-range planning meeting, where people had, and I said, well, the amount of reimbursement we're getting versus all the effort of our staff, you can almost make the argument that it's not worth doing the program. But I don't know if there's a way, instead of having the onus, especially if this is Windows predominantly, instead of putting the onus on John or Dr. Gallo or that, I don't know, is there a way that we could put more of the onus where we hire a temporary person or something to be there more driven by Paul Fields, with John overseeing them or something like that? So it's not all the pressure on the administration. I mean, obviously they have to be involved, but this is a much smaller project. But I was wondering if there's a way that we could possibly delegate some of that authority away.
I have a question. So I read this letter that we received, and it does say that you have to submit in SOI for each school, and you have to prioritize the SOI. So if we were to go forward, we would have to do 2 separate applications, and then we would have to prioritize ourselves which school we thought.
Yeah, I read through that as well. And
Sorry to
it's
mention, that
not-
when we met, it was before this letter
Right,
came.
right.
Okay.
So it's not totally clear here whether that whole discussion has to do with only the regular program, because then in the next page, it talks about the accelerated repair SOIs. And it doesn't talk about, establishing priorities or whatever. So I don't know if you have any further.
John did
Yeah,
call
okay,
there
good.
because it seemed unclear.
Yeah.
And so you might want to.
Yeah.
Because this is about all their programs,
I
not
did-
just the one.
I talked to Brian McLaughlin on that, because I wanted to ask him a question. If I go forward and I submit 2 SOIs, could I possibly get approved for both? Because it looked as though you had to prioritize, and therefore you're only going to get one. You're correct in that assumption, Dennis, that where it's saying prioritize, it's sort of like for a major project, really. That's what the intent is, although the words don't say that. The intent is for a major project, but it is entirely possible that you could, in fact, be invited in for 2 SOIs or more.
And we wouldn't need to prioritize them.
No, you still need to prioritize, but they don't look at that prioritization sort of in their review process, was the explanation that I got.
Yeah.
Because I thought that's a similar sort of answer we got, as I recall from memory, when there was the Green Program Initiative, where you could have just done the boilers, the windows, the electrical.
Yeah,
and
this is the
stuff.
similar thing, it's the same
Yeah,
thing.
This is the next generation of that
Yeah.
program. yeah.
But you could have done more than one school at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I just want to mention, since I happen to, they say, as I say, I was in the room when we were talking about the breathing life into the schools and came up with that $7 million number, although I wasn't on capital outlay, I was on AdCom at the time. And, the $7 million number was somewhat arbitrary. He said, hey, look, what do we think is a reasonable number we can afford at the time? We picked $7 million, roughly equal between both schools, and we did some of the window work at that time, but did not do all the work. So the windows that we're talking about here were on the capital outlay plan 10 years ago, maybe? So, again, not that, could you go another year without doing it? I'm sure you could. The windows are 60 years old now. I suppose they could go another year. But I think that in my mind, the real issue is, and I don't spend a lot of time because I think Ray said it pretty well, we were going to breathe 10 to 15 years life into those schools. That's 6 years ago. If we were to do something in a major way, more likely it would be Foster rather than Plymouth River, it would take 3 or 4 years to make that happen. So I think as a town, we need to look at, whether it's advisory, Board of Selectmen or whatever, we need to ask the question, or do we want to invest this knowing that maybe in 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 years, we may be doing something else? Or do we want to say invest the money in Plymouth River, which we expect has a longer useful life, is a better layout and so forth, and start thinking about in 10 years, I'm making up a number, that it would be time to do something, a bigger project. I don't know the answer to that, but I think it's a useful discussion to have, because the last thing we really want is to invest $1.3 million or $1.5 million or whatever actually turns out to be at Foster School, and then say in 10 years, we really decided this isn't going to work out and we need to do something else, and now you can bet somebody's going to say, and I think rightfully so, why did you invest $1.5 million in the school
Right.
with 20-year windows when in 10 years we want to do something else? So, I don't, to Andy's point earlier, I think of the two buildings, I don't think I'm saying anything that we haven't talked about before, that Plymouth River is a better, from a teaching point of view, programmatic point of view, and whatever, is a better facility of the two. And so, from that point of view, we would, but I think Foster has greater need.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point about the time.
Yeah.
By the time we open the new middle school, it will have been nearly 4 years since we were invited into the capital pipeline to do a project. So it takes time.
Yeah.
From start to finish to come up with an idea to develop whether it's going to be a renovation or a new school or, I'm getting way ahead of myself because we're not even thinking about
Right.
that yet, but it came up in the context of, gee, does it make sense to do these windows? And really not, does it make sense for us to make the decision, but what will the MSBA say? When they come down and they look at Plymouth River and/or Foster, and we're asking to put money into, and for them to reimburse money, will they say it's a worthy project? I don't know.
Question, John, what's involved with putting together an SOI?
Carol, I don't know. I mean, I know that I'll go
No,
online.
but we saw the application.
Yeah,
The
I'll set it up.
application's online.
There's
There's some research.
some work, yeah.
Some figures that you have to get, so.
And then we have to
it's
go to
work.
town meeting.
Well,
Well, we need selectmen first.
but before that, before you can submit, you have to have a vote of this body.
Right.
And a vote of the selectmen. And what has to go with the application, which is multiple pages, and it requires some research about the buildings and the condition and how old they are and all that. That has to go together with the vote, to be the two votes, to arrive there on the 14th. And it's not clear, it's interesting that they give you a timeline for when you would hear from them. What we don't have here is the exact timeline for when we would hear back. And so that's the reason for putting money in the capital for the presumed study, because otherwise, if we were trying to get the money at town meeting, that could be problematic because we might not hear from them
Sure.
in time
For
to
town
have that
meeting,
money,
right.
because you've got to act fairly promptly once you.
Get 18 months to,
Yeah, they do say 18
18
months, that's the
months.
thing, so
But that's
completed
the
18 months from the
18 months.
invite,
right.
Yeah.
right?
But we don't know when the invite is. I guess.
Right.
But then it also says that you have to get 90, you have to have your funding 90 days after
Right.
acceptance.
Yeah, you have to.
So I don't know if we need a special or not.
Within
Right.
90 days.
So, so when we were talking through it long range, I was kind of thinking, well, on the heels of middle school, on the heels of the Fields project, what's how interested is the town going to be in funding even a feasibility study for another school project, right? So as much as I'd like to submit these now for both and move forward and see what the MSBA says, I think we should wait a year. I think we should start to do the work that's going to go into preparing these applications, because we know this is going to come out again next year, assuming they have the same programs, right? Get them kind of teed up, have a conversation with the selectmen about it ahead of time, have a conversation with capital outlay, and we've already talked about it and laid the groundwork, and kind of let the dust settle on the middle school and the Fields a little bit, and then come back next year and talk about it amongst ourselves again and see if we are in the same place. That's how I feel personally.
I agree.
I agree.
We don't have in this document, I don't think, the percentage of reimbursement is typically been more like about 10% lower
Yeah.
than reimbursement.
What we had
In the
in
third-
2013.
Because the base is, I think the base is lower maybe, and then the add-ons are financially.
Yeah.
Right,
Well-
and it changes from year to year, so we don't know exactly what it
Yeah.
would be.
In 12, it was 30, ours would have been 33.95. In 13, ours would have been 32.47. So they don't know what the 14 is
Okay.
because it gets set. It should get set this month sometime.
So let me suggest perhaps another option, and that is, I think we're all in agreement that Plymouth River is a school that is worth investing in, and that has, a lot of future utility for us, that this is part of a project, like I say, that was really determined 10 years ago, that was never funded because we said, okay, we're going to spend the $7 million in the schools. We can only afford to do X for that. It didn't get back into capital plan because, we were then building schools. And again, the upside clearly is that we could get 30% reimbursement on a $700,000 or $800,000 project. I might suggest that we go ahead with the Plymouth River SOI and have what I think is a larger discussion on the Foster piece, because, we talked about time frame. It's 6 years now since we breathed life into the building. If we decided we wanted to do something, a larger project, you're talking about, if it was 2 or 3 years by the time we figured it out, if it's 4 years by the time it gets done, you're talking about 13 years or 14 years into the cycle when we said we're going to breathe 10 to 15 years into a building. So to me, I think the Plymouth River one is something that we have recognized for 10 years needed to be done. It's a building that we know we have a lot of utility with. It would be my inclination to go forward with that one, and then start the conversation on the Foster situation, which I think is a more kind of complicated subject, and look at it that way. I mean, again, we're not talking about a huge number here in terms of what it's going to cost the town. We're talking about a project that's an $800,000 project that hopefully would get reimbursed for $240,000. We're talking about a $600,000 project
Wow.
that,
I don't think the number makes a difference.
Yeah.
I don't think, it could be $10, and I don't think it would make a difference right now. I think you have to look at the context, and you have to look at, I think folks are a little tired of spending a lot of tax dollars on school projects, and I don't blame them. Do we need them? Absolutely. I agree with you in concept about PRS, but I think as a practical matter, it would not be as well received as an ask to make an investment in what we perceive to be a better facility versus putting money into the greater need, which is Foster. I think, folks will look at, well, if you're looking to maintain or improve your facilities, then really Foster's where the money wants to go. We can make a great argument about the better investment in a better facility in PRS, but I don't think as an ask that's as easy to sell.
Well, also- Go ahead.
I agree with what Ray said. I just think we also have a capacity issue here. I think we have to clean up a few of these projects
Yeah.
before we jump into another one.
Liza?
So I have a couple questions. Dennis, you referred to that this has been on the capital plan, 10 years. Has it still been like a placeholder and then
Yes.
pushed back
Well, what
as
we-
a line item?
What we talked about last year
It was
specifically
last year,
was,
right, yeah.
was last year.
perhaps pursuing an SOI with the MSBA.
Okay.
So in their mind, that's what we were starting to think about.
All right. So I do agree with Ray that I think the town's not ready to stomach that right now. But I think we would be good to, this year, to really document how bad the windows are and keep this on the presentation to capital outlay, that it is something that is on the radar. But, right now, we'll live with what we have. And because if it is a problem and the windows are drafty or, the wood is, or whatever the material is not safe, it will have to be done. But if we can at least socialize it, but show that we're in constraint and get Plymouth River to a level 1 school and like Foster.
Yeah, the windows are single pane and
Yeah.
plexiglass, and,
Yeah.
so there's no R values, it's not energy efficient
Right.
at all. Yeah.
Okay.
To Andy's point, Is the feasibility study a requirement
Yes.
of participating in MSBA
Yes.
Yes.
They changed,
versus just getting an estimate?
yes. Well, I mean, if we want to go through the program and get reimbursement,
Right.
we have to do it their way. And they have a program, and
Very interesting point.
if you remember, I think it happened while we were going through the middle school approval process, they actually changed their process, and they added an extra step. So the feasibility is absolutely necessary.
And John, what's the estimate, your guesstimate for the feasibility studies for?
I grabbed that based on, as I said, it's based on my estimate of the windows, and then I looked for data at the MSBA. So for Foster, I'm looking at about $123,000, and I think for Plymouth River, it's about $80,000.
Over 200,000.
Right, and if you think about in the context of what, we've been focused on these school projects for a long time, right? And rightly so. They need to be done, and there are others that need to be done and will be done at some point in the future, I'm sure. But, folks on the other side are focused on this building, on the needs of other departments like elder services, on recreation, things like that. So I think that, and we still need to do something at the depot for 179 and 12. And that's going to be part of, I think, a larger approach that the town's going to take, maybe with rec involved, who knows? But, so, I think that is likely to be more of the focus. Andy?
Yeah, sorry, Dr.
No,
Kellogg.
go ahead.
I know you want to move on, so I'll just summarize this. I appreciate what everyone says, the town is not ready and everything. When I did present last year in front of Capital Outlay, I made it clear I'd like to come back for an SOI. If you think the temperature's not there, that's, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I would just say that, I would just remind us, though, when we did go to town meeting for the school, for the Fields project and for the middle school project, they were overwhelmingly approved. And I do feel, I'm not a real estate broker, but it feels like, I think we're getting very good real estate values in this town because of the quality of education and because we're invested in the infrastructure. Dennis's plan is sort of like a happy medium, but if the votes here are against it, then that's what it is. But I would continue to move forward, even if we all voted for it and the Board of Selectmen shot it down, that gives us next year, then it really puts it on their radar. But I'm still in favor of at least going for one of the two. But I know you want to move on.
Dot.
A couple of comments. One is that Andy got me thinking about this, forget the MSBA bit, because essentially, if the cost is $850,000, and that would give us, with what we think might be the reimbursement, $250,000, but we have to pay $78,000 to get the $250,000, and we have to go through a lot of to get the money, and we can't simply go out to bid and do it when we want to do it. I think we need
Maybe
to
choose the
give
type
that
of
some
windows or whatever
some
that
thought.
we want, a B or a C rather than an A.
And the other thing is that if we were to do these things, and this is just kind of top of the head thinking, so we have to look at it more, but if we were to do this at Foster ourselves rather than MSBA, we protect our option to go back to MSBA to do something more extensive at Foster. That's one of the biggest concerns I have about Foster. You're right, it does need the most work, but I think a selling point to the community is that if we were to go forward and put a new roof at Foster, that could preclude our getting 43–44% reimbursement on a bigger project that needs to be done. So I kind of think that the community isn't ready, particularly with the likelihood of some yet-to-be-determined project at town level. But I guess I feel that if we were going to do one as an SOI, certainly Plymouth River would be the one for a reason that you haven't all mentioned here, and that is that the minute we start talking about Foster and do we do a window project or not, it's going to bring up the whole bigger thing of, well, what are your plans for the future? And isn't it about time to do a new enrollment projection study, because we do those about every 10 years. So I think it brings up a broader discussion that maybe we aren't prepared to have.
I would agree.
And then the last thing I want to mention is that Dennis has mentioned that the $7 million, I think for the record, it should be clear that the $7 million did include a window project. And none of you were on the school committee at the time, but it turned out that we had to come up to code on a number of handicap access issues, and that at both Foster and Plymouth River, and that took money away. So it wasn't that sufficient money wasn't budgeted. It was that there were some unforeseen things that had to do with the assessed value of the two buildings, and it put us over the limit of being exempted from having to upgrade our
So it appears, unless somebody's changed their mind, that there's at least 3 people that think we shouldn't go forward with either. Right? And there's only 6 of us here, so it.
Well, all it said now, what Dot said, I think we would bode well if doing some more research on what the project is and what Andy suggested and Dot said, that, maybe we choose to only replace a certain number of windows in the building at a time.
or maybe
That's-
ultimately we go with an MSBA project, but
Yeah.
think differently about.
Well, that's what Dennis is basically
Really
suggesting.
researching the costs and understanding what are we really talking about, and what does it make sense,
Right.
doing the FOIL formulas.
But it isn't too early this year to have the discussion
No.
Yeah, no.
at both Capitol
Yeah.
and at the
Right.
selectmen
Because
level.
ultimately, the risk in inviting the MSBA in, if we apply on Foster, is they could come in and look at Foster and say, no, we're not going to invest in that because you need other things. So if we do that now, then we run the risk of not being able to partner with them later on, and that's what we might really want to do.
So what?
So what is,
So Dr. Ed's on the fence here.
No, I'm just.
Well, there's only 6 of us here, so.
You said you counted, right?
Well, we don't have to vote, you have another meeting. So you have all of this to mull over, so you don't have to take your vote tonight. I have alerted the Board of Selectmen, both in writing and speaking to Betty and also to Irma, that, this may come to them, and sent information, this document along, so that, hopefully we could get on their agenda at relatively short notice.
Andy?
I defer to you, Ray, but with all due respect, Dr. Gallo, we have so much on our plate over the next couple of weeks. I'd rather put this one to bed, So I'm trying to put pressure on you, Dr. Ed. But Ray, it's your chair, so I
I
defer
think
to
you're going
you.
to put the pressure on Paul if Ed decides to.
If he showed up.
Well, as a result of that.
You understand what I mean? Like, we have so many things.
I do. I think, just kind of putting the numbers aside and not wanting to put Ed on the spot, I think it would be valuable if Paul participated
It's fair.
in the discussion too.
Okay.
And
Tell him to
we
watch the
do-
tape ahead of
we
time.
do have a little time,
The operative word is little.
a little.
It'll have to be the next meeting, right?
Yeah.
Wait, do we all have one consensus, though? That
27.
the only thing we would be going for is PRS, not on both, because that's like, I'm agreeing to your compromise.
Right, yeah, I mean, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
It's either do neither or do PRS. It sounds like is what's on the table.
I don't even know if I agree with that.
No, I'm saying,
I don't
I-
really know what that means, so I would
Right.
like a little more time, even a week,
Yeah.
to understand it.
okay,
I mean, I just think there are two sides to that concept, so I'm with you, but
right.
That's fair.
so should we
Fair
move
point.
on?
Dennis, call me and we can talk about your
Okay,
point of view.
so then, and I pulled out
So
my.
we do this
yeah.
just to finalize the whole thing, so we could notify the selectmen that this group would be prepared, would take a vote on the 27th.
Mhm.
And therefore, we would be requesting that they, between the 27th and 14th, put us on the agenda as a possible request
Yep.
that they could remove, but better that than for them not to schedule at all, and then we're stuck.
And so at this point, we'll leave, my question is, should we leave just capital outlay the way it is? Because right now, we have feasibility studies in FY15 and window projects in FY16.
Well, if
I don't
if
think
you
they're gonna
vote to
miss-
do neither, then you can take out the feasibility money,
Right.
but because it rests with a higher authority, I would
Right.
leave in the 16 as still a need.
Okay.
yeah. I don't think capital outlay will make a decision tomorrow night.
No,
after,
no.
I mean, they'll make some
I
preliminary,
agree.
you know, I would hate for us to have it in there and then have it come out and not have something to replace it and have our ultimate number reduced.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
But it may come out before they
Yeah,
come
yeah.
to the end of their process.
But I think we can have the discussion with them and tell them what we're mulling over and what the pros and cons are, and, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing I would say, and as long as you're going to revise this,
Yep.
you know, my bias would be that I wouldn't put a feasibility study in $122,911. I'd put in $125,000, and I'd put in the other one at $80,000, because we have no idea, right?
Understood, but in defense of my numbers, but in defense,
No, you're
just
fine.
know that I
You're fine
always,
perfectly.
I do a calculation and I stick that number down. So if anybody
regardless,
says,
he wants
where'd you
to
get
give a
that number? I
number,
said, this is how I got it, these are my assumptions.
Right.
If I have a wrong assumption, we can fix that, but this is where I got the numbers. They're not being made up.
Right, yeah.
But I'm happy to make it
I hear you.
125 and 80, believe me.
Moving along, another fun topic, technology spending plan.
So I could comment on what you have in your packet, and then Dennis probably wants to speak to this, but, you know, as we are building the middle school budget and building on our parent surveys and our want to, as a result of the planning meeting, to do more in terms of technology and so on, I put together where the dollars might come from looking out for 3 years. And of course, we have significant dollars, 1.2 something, nearly 1.3 million coming from the building project specifically for the middle school. So thinking about the technology, to me, there were 3 kind of areas of priority that we have to focus on. One is park. One was some of the new initiatives that we wanted, particularly things like one-to-one and more iPads at the elementary school, and so on, ideas that we've talked about before. And then the third one is the infrastructure, which is well underway and which will benefit from the closing of the middle school, the existing middle school, because we can transfer some things like access points for wireless from there, and additional smart boards that can go to the buildings and classrooms that don't have them. So then within those things, the most immediate priority in terms of dollars had to be the park. So I put this plan together at the time that we were doing the middle school. And so the middle school saw a copy of it. Of particular interest, of course, to everyone was the idea of the one-to-one and the tech planning committee for the middle school, which involved Joe, Karen Condon, the new tech specialist there, Derek, and Roger Bodie, all who are knowledgeable about the building, did really a lot of research and decided that for the purposes for which we want to use one-to-one, and in consideration of other people's experiences and so on, they chose to go with a Chromebook program there rather than an iPad program. So that was one piece of decision. And so in this little packet here, you have an explanation of that, kind of an educationally based explanation, one from Derek and one from Joe, that support that particular decision. But the funding plan really is made up of dollars that will come from the building committee, a middle school, that we're requesting come from capital, and then that may need to come from some other source. And another source over time could be a warrant article. It could be more requests to the capital outlay committee in subsequent years, or a larger request, or it could come from the fact that there is some remaining money that we anticipate in the middle school budget will be as a contingency. Could there be a request that goes to that committee to fund additional of the technology? So I think Dennis thought it was important that you all have an opportunity to see this and see where we are with respect to technology and the planning. A lot of moving pieces, as you can imagine, and this is really just a summary of the funding piece. And that's where these numbers, Carol, you asked about the number, the $29,000 number, and if you look over on the back, in FY15, it was 2 mobile charging stations, and those being to get science labs. The science labs at the middle school are already using pilot dollars, and will pick up more dollars from the building committee money, so certainly it seems reasonable to get started on a project for science labs at the high school.
And you see the park readiness on that.
The one thing
There's the 35016 and then the two,
Right.
the 35016
Yep, I
and
saw
12480, which is the total of the 85.
Derek's
83.
Derek's piece on, why do an initiative. In the implementation section, it only talks about the Chromebooks in the 6th grade. It doesn't mention the 7th or,
Well, the plan would be successive years of adding a 6th grade each time.
Right, so
Right.
In order to meet
So
the
the
budget.
6th grade, the first year, the 7th grade will continue the 7th grade and will continue the 8th grade, right?
no, I understand that, but in addition to the Chromebooks, we're doing iPads for science, and that's not mentioned here at all. That's my,
No, that is in the middle school budget, though.
no, I understand
Yeah.
that, but this isn't
Oh, I
a
just
budget
didn't
piece,
mention.
this is a
Right.
an issue piece. And-
Well, yeah, but it was an issue piece over justifying the Chromebooks over the iPads.
Okay, can you just to update me, so that on this implementation, at the same time as the 6th grade, there'll be some specific use in 7th and 8th grade with some other technology?
iPads and science labs. I think that we have come to understand over all of our research that there's not just one handheld
Right.
kind of device that is needed. And there's not a question in anybody's mind on the educational side that, that science needs iPads.
And that would be, so while the 6th
In
grade...
the labs. So
Right.
these aren't iPads that would go home, but
Correct. Right.
they would be in each lab for all students to use.
All students, okay.
So next year's 6th graders are going to be the first,
No, it's delayed a year.
Well, no, what it says
No,
here,
next year's-
that's why the question I had, it says here, in the semester 2 of the 2014-15 year,
Yeah.
distribute devices to all 6th grade students.
So a year from
But they
now,
would stay in school, not go home.
Right.
a year from
So a
now,
year from right now.
they would be
Yeah.
having them.
right, that's what we talked about in
Yeah,
October.
but teachers would be having them in the second half
Right.
of this year.
Right.
So
Right.
so next year's 6th graders,
Second semester.
Yes, next year, 6th grade.
next year's 6th graders, a year from now, those
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
who are in the 6th grade will be the first to
Yes.
get the Chromebooks.
Right,
6th graders now, who will then be in 7th grade,
Right.
will only have access to iPads and
Right.
science, and
Right.
that's the same for 8th grade.
right.
So no, okay, gotcha. That's what we're talking about.
So the question I have, if I understand this correctly, is school opens next September, all goes well, and looks like it's going well. In the second semester, about this time next year, 6th graders will get the Chromebooks and they'll start using them in school. That's what this says. Those 6th graders, when they get to the 7th grade, will also be using those same Chromebooks?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Right?
they would
Okay.
keep them in.
they keep them.
Yeah.
That's what I figured, okay. And then the new 6th graders will be getting
Get new
Chromebooks
ones, right.
the following, that 15, 16. And then,
And,
And-
you know, there's a want to see if we can move that timeline
Right.
up, and we may be able to.
Right.
You know, depending really about how quickly you can get teachers on board and that kind of thing. So you've got here kind of a conservative timeline.
so the only question I have, I guess, is, and this kind of, I don't know if it piggybacks on your concern or not, but, so if in the spring of 2015, the 6th graders and the 7th graders will now be using the Chromebooks, right?
No, just
Spring
the
of
6th.
2016, that they would both be using it.
No, in the
Correct.
spring,
Yeah. Next year, spring of 2015 is the first time that 6th graders will get them.
So
So
it'll
it'll
be
only be
spring
the
of
6th graders.
And then the
2016 would
7th
be
grade
6th
teachers would
and
get them the
7th.
same time the
Right.
6th graders,
Right.
students.
So that
They
those 6th
can
graders the
prepare.
following year, who
Yeah.
will be 7th
Right.
graders, will then have them.
Right.
Yeah.
okay. So in the 15, 16 year,
Yeah.
The sixth graders will be, the new sixth graders will be having this. The
Seventh
seventh
graders
graders
will
will
also
have
have
it.
them.
Okay.
Correct.
And then the following, it won't be the following, till the following year that we do it in the eighth grade.
Yeah, or
Well,
maybe.
or that they move up in the eighth grade has,
Yeah, right.
yeah, correct.
If we can compress that
Right,
last
right,
year.
and that-
There are a lot of
that's the
reasons for
question.
starting the sixth grade. One is that I think the life of these, with kids taking them home and so on, is gonna be about 3 years. So why buy them for eighth graders?
Right.
And then we don't see a one-to-one at the high school involving Chromebooks. But one of the other options that we have for funding, besides a warrant article hitting capital harder, convincing the building committee that maybe some of the contingency money could go in this direction. And we are under the budget for the middle school because, you know, we have to go out to bid on some items, not all. Some are from the state bid list. But the other option for funding something in the out years is a lease plan. The difference there is the lease plan moves into the operating budget rather than the capital budget. So a lot of moving pieces in terms of how we
So
fund it.
one thought I'm just kind of having, and I'm talking off the top of my head a little bit, but is if in the spring of, in the fall of 2016, which is when, in the fall of 2015, when the original sixth graders will now be moving into the seventh grade, perhaps what we could do for the eighth graders at that time would be to allow them to use Chromebooks perhaps in the school as part of a one-to-one, and that those Chromebooks could then be passed on to the sixth graders that come in the following year, you know, so that hopefully wouldn't be too beat up, and we could use it. And then, you know, if it happens a little faster, would I think make it easier to get it funded through the school construction budget. You know, there's some time frame there, so just a thought
Yeah, no,
as a way of
that's a
doing
good-
that.
I think we probably all would like to see the schedule accelerated
Right.
to the
Sure.
extent that it can be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree.
we're
I think
probably
that's a
all
good
in
thought,
agreement.
that
Yeah.
buy them for the eighth grade, but then reuse them.
Right.
And I wouldn't even restrict it to saying they wouldn't go home. It's
No.
not the same experience.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Good.
So the only other thing I would suggest, not for tonight, but we will need to have, you know, and it's in the capital outlay, it talks about, you know, to be determined what happens after the first 3 years. Again, partly that's a question of the useful life, partly it's a question of how the program goes, whatever. But, you know, we will need to, I think, at least kind of extrapolate out in these out years, not necessarily, again, this year, is what we expect will be and how the town's going to fund if this is a successful program, and we hope, certainly all expect it to be successful. You know, what happens, whether it's 3 years out or 4 years out or whatever, when we need to fund the next group of hardware to go in
Well, the
there.
other thing is that I'm hoping there'll be a grant written to fund something that came up even after we did this, and that is, you know, pretty much agreement that the Chromebooks are good for English and for social studies, that we really need iPads for science because of the apps and the fact they connect to our probes and so on. But I went to a conference and saw information about math classrooms and what the one-to-one needed to be there in the building, kind of one-to-one. And then David Jewett, who's the math chairman, has spoken up that, you know, as we look forward to handheld devices, whether it be smartphones or whatever, that really in science, in mathematics, you really want some sort of a tablet thing that you can write on, do the problems and that kind of thing, so that he's interested in some sort of a pilot that perhaps we could get funded by foundation or other sources of piloting some sort of a tablet in math classrooms. So I think we've learned a lot, and we've learned that there's more than one way to do things at different levels, and perhaps only one way at certain levels.
Anything else on the technology right now?
Yeah, I probably just should say publicly that As everyone knows, I was really pushing for this to happen, and I think I'm really pleased with the outcome we've come with. It looks like you did a very thorough job, that we thought it out. I'm sure we'll find something that we didn't touch upon, but it's been a very thoughtful process with a lot of people involved, and I think we've come to a good place.
Good. I would say, too, that I think, we all would like to see it go out further, so we got to plan it, we can approach it. I'm really happy that we're at a 3-year thing, because things are changing so fast that we could make other choices in 3 years.
Okay. So moving on, 7.4, it's information about an annual trip, right, the Model UN.
Actually, there's more than one of these
That's right, there
groups
was-
going on, so you
this is the
approved one
second group,
before.
that's right.
This is different.
This is the different group.
Different location, different group, yes.
That's right, because the other one was in the city, in
Harvard,
Boston.
and goes to Harvard.
And this one's over at DC.
Right. So none of these other things require conversation or a vote. You might notice that we have here the appointment of Tabitha Beery, who is our new half-time food service worker. She started on Monday? No, what did you, last Monday.
Sixth.
Yeah.
It shows the sixth.
Last Monday. We also do have candidates in place doing training, if you will, for the other 2 jobs. And the only reason that they're not here is we had their names when this agenda was being prepared, but we hadn't determined salary agreements with them. And I think we're now set on both of those.
Should be.
So they will be in your next packet. But we have Pam King, who's an internal candidate who will be replacing Nancy Sylvia. And we have Nancy Cronin,
Yeah,
thank
Nancy
you.
Cronin.
Who is a person from Situate who is replacing the position that was formed by the half-time new person we had for this office, we had not filled, and the other half of Vicki Hasty, who is one of our retirees. So for the last week, we've been struggling with enough seats for the bodies that we have. But
Do we need to expand this building, do you think?
Nancy and Vicki will both, their last day will be Friday, so some of you might particularly want to give Nancy a call or stop in or wish her well, because she will be leaving with all of her experience on Friday.
Dot, one question on the athletic coaches. I don't know if I've asked this in the past, but I'd be interested in knowing for each team, for all of the sports, for each of the seasons, how many participants there are for each of them.
You will get, we have that information from Margaret. We usually give that out as part of the budget.
Okay.
Yeah, when we go through
the
the,
prior
Because
year.
we need to use that figure to get the per
Right, okay.
participant thing. So it's part of the chart that Margaret does.
So it'd be the prior, so you use the prior year numbers for the upcoming budget?
I think she uses the fall, last spring and this fall.
Okay.
Um,
I'm always curious to see how
Yeah.
many kids are participating.
Well, it is part of that chart.
Also
but I
kind
don't
of
know if we
looking
have
at
that yet.
coaching
I'll have
assignments
to
and
look and
whatnot.
see. I don't
Yeah.
remember seeing
But
it.
we'll make sure that we have the chart, but we would give that out at next meeting, because one of the categories we're going to talk about at the next work session is athletics.
Okay.
So, but I'm glad you mentioned it, because we do need to check that we have it, or we will get it.
let's see. All right, so you mentioned, so we had some appointments, resignation, salary advancements.
Yeah, be aware that the February 1st is a coaching, and that is one of the 2 times during the year that people can change column. And so some of them are listed here, but I would expect at our next meeting, there'll be another batch as well.
Great.
On the Fields project, I know John does have some invoices
Do.
that he'll send around. So it's It's almost done. There's 2 punch lists that are being worked on right now.
That's tentative, right?
I don't know, I had a conversation with Tom Perry today, so, I mean, obviously, there's more work that, RAD is gonna be doing when they come back in the spring. A lot of it is kind of, looking at plantings and, how grass is growing and all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, their work is done for now, and there's some punch list things that are still being worked on, very, very minor things. And the concession building is virtually done. There's some punch list things that are ongoing. The interior, what's the major things that are left in the interior are the installation of the countertops. And that stainless steel is being manufactured right now, and I think will be installed by the 24th, something like that. So we do have, there's still a lot of stuff that needs to be dealt with on this, and will be, from time to time over the next several months. We have a lot of closeout documentation that we're going to have to deal with the planning board and the building commissioner, filing as-built surveys and things of that nature. We've already gone through a lot of the training. We'll get operation and maintenance manuals and things like that. The punch list work will be completed. We'll have to close out the permits, Conservation Commission order of conditions, getting a certificate of compliance, all the inspections that are necessary in order to get a permanent certificate of occupancy. For the bleachers, press box, multipurpose field, and the installation of the baseball, softball scoreboards and the ad panels on the multipurpose field scoreboard. Those are going to be done in early spring.
Ray, what's the timetable for the punch list? Deadlines to whom?
Yeah, I received today updated punch list, but I don't have the status of any of the items. I know a lot of them have been completed. Well, I have status on the concession punch list. A lot of them have been completed. There are some that are open.
Well, Tom sent an open letter to all of us encouraging suggestions or thoughts that we might have.
Right.
What's the status of that? So I haven't submitted mine yet.
Right. I encourage you to do so.
To whom and what's my deadline?
You could give it to me. You
Okay.
can send it right to Tom. I'd love to see a copy of it, but, however you want to do it.
Okay.
I in December, John and I met at the concession building in the morning when Dan DeLullo, the architect, was there, and we went through a number of things and talked about a number of things there. Two major things that still need to be done in the concession building is some additional electrical work and a resolution of the floor. The floor is not, the finish of the floor is not quite what we had hoped or what it should be, and frankly, it looks terrible. And something needs to be done to fix it. And it's really a function of the specifications by the designer, because the contractor has done what the specifications said and even has performed some remedial work to try to improve it. It's still not acceptable. There's some masonry cleanup that needs to be done. So there are a few things that are still outstanding, and we're going to be having some discussions about them in the next week or so we can get those resolved. The hope is that to the extent any additional change orders are necessary, the numbers will be very low, but we have to rectify these things, in the near term anyway. So, overall, the building is great. It looks great. I think it's going to be a terrific facility. We have to get some equipment in there, you know, in the concession room. But we can talk more about that as we move forward, because we don't need it right now. But, you know, most of the punch list, my understanding is, for the fields portion has been completed. I know there's a couple things with the press box that remain open, and I have to check on the status of the rest of it. I think we will probably have one more construction meeting in the next couple weeks. I haven't planned anything yet, but we'll talk about that and set something up. But overall, I was there, you were there, we were there just Sunday, and they have, like the gates, for instance, I've seen some improvement in the gates. They've done work on the gates.
I didn't get a chance to tell you this, but on Sunday,
Yeah,
I shooed some kids off the field.
yeah. And when I drove by later on,
They were back?
they were there. Because you were gone, the gate was locked, and I got my daughter from basketball, and they were on the field.
Okay, now, how did they get on?
They hopped the fence.
No, they didn't.
There was a gate open?
There was a gate open.
Which one?
There's a gate on the 3-foot peripheral fence on the track
Yeah,
that was open,
right, that's open.
and that just feeds right in.
Right, but that one doesn't, that one is,
I've never seen it open before, and
that one doesn't get locked. The thing is that one stays open, that doesn't get locked, I don't think. But the entrance to the track is locked. But I guess they could go in the,
The serpentine, yes. But
Yeah.
that gate should be,
Yeah.
gate should be locked, but it's only a 4-foot gate, it's only a 4-foot fence.
yeah, it should be locked, I guess, people can jump it. That's a good point, I saw it was open.
They
See, but
now
it's just
know,
like-
they know how they're
Yeah.
getting
Now
on
it's
that
on
field.
TV.
However, I didn't see any dogs on the turf. But there was a dog on the
Making
grass
progress.
football field. And I could see from my parked car in the parking lot, the sign that was on the fence that said, "No dogs
Yeah.
or other pets allowed." That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, the other
we don't
signage
wanna
is
make any
done too, so we put that up.
Any parallels, but it's just like when they had that dog chasing the geese off of downtown. As soon as the dog left, the geese came back.
Right. So, yeah, there's still some things to
Work out.
But all in all, things have gone well. It's almost done. I know that the Community Outreach Subcommittee's been working on some plans. Maybe they'll fill you in a couple minutes.
No, we are going to meet this week, or next Wednesday, so we have nothing to tell you yet, but we will
Good.
soon, we'll keep you all in suspense.
But our consultants are going to come back with some
Exactly.
ideas.
Our consultants have been working hard on the plans.
Wednesday as in tomorrow?
Excuse me?
Wednesday as in
A
tomorrow?
week
or
from
week
tomorrow, at 8 AM.
Are there any other 48-hour items?
No, there are not.
Any other subcommittee reports?
Did you want to do invoices now, Ray, though, before you moved on from the fields, or you
I
want to do
guess
that
I
afterwards?
guess we should, right? We need a vote, right?
Yeah, the invoices are in the folder right there. There's 5 invoices in there, one for Gale Associates, invoice number 1311359 for
Right.
$2,205.88. That's associated with the field project. And another Gale invoice, 1311360 for $872 for concession portion of the project and reimbursables. Pear Corporation for $8,296.64 for project management. That's invoice number 6. And then Park Corporation invoice number 3 for $2,027.50. That's the last bill of the geotech services. And then an invoice for Seaver number 5 for $11,022.
Right, and then, so Seavers, Pencil Rec, you know, all this was obviously approved by our project manager and the architect, and
Yes.
John went through it as well, and on Seavers' contract, there's 45,000, a little over 45,000 remaining, including retainage. So there's still some work left to complete on theirs. Do you want to?
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion that we pay Gale Associates, I'll repeat what John said, $2,205.88. for invoice 1311359. A second to Gale Associates invoice 1311360 for $872. An invoice to PAR for invoice number 6 for $8,296.64. A second to PAR, invoice number 3 for $2,027.50. And finally to Seaver for $11,022 even.
I have a motion. Is there a
Second.
second? Any discussion, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Send these around for signatures.
Dr. Go, while we're signing and the contracts are being passed around, do you have handy the dates of, shall we say, the second semester school, regularly scheduled school committee meetings?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
January,
Yes.
February, March,
We
April?
did update those, and then we changed this one. So I will send it around again. We updated it, and the next day this one was changed. But yes, we did update the,
John, I'm sorry, there's two, the Seaver direct is two, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, yeah, a couple of.
Looks like two
copies.
originals here.
2 copies, yeah.
Okay.
Is that something that's handy, or is that?
I thought I had it in my book, but
There's five.
I will have to get it for you. Nancy send it around tomorrow.
That'd be great.
It's pretty much, oh, here it is.
11,022 for total.
Yeah.
So in February, we have the 10th and the 24th. January 27th here. And the 10th and the,
Go ahead, I'm sorry. March?
also the 10th and the 24th. April the 7th, and then the 28th, which is town meeting. One meeting in May, the 12th, but 3 meetings in June, on the 2nd, the 16th, and the 30th, 2 weeks apart, but just because of the way the holiday falls in May, and the fact that we like to have a week after the election to be able to do an orientation, should that be needed. So 1 in May and 3 in June.
26 is Memorial Day.
Yes.
The April
And
7th
graduation's 5/31.
Actually,
Damn.
May is the 26th, right, and the graduation is the 31st.
John does.
I know, yeah. That's
Right.
And then we have the joint meetings, what, February 6th? or?
February 6th.
Yeah.
We have the, just a reminder, Laura mentioned it, but we have the Saturday morning meeting with advisory on the 25th at 9 o'clock. Move that time to 9 o'clock start.
Oh, not 8?
Nope,
Lovely.
9 o'clock. I think we'll limit it to, I don't know what we've done in the past, 2 or 3 hours, no more than 3.
We shouldn't need more than 3.
Right.
I mean, the questions that I received so far, it's a very short list, and I don't know what beyond that we'll want to talk about.
Yeah.
And we still have open the possibility of meeting on the 30th, which we'll decide next time, budget session.
Okay.
Would you mind asking Nancy just to email it? But I didn't get
Yeah,
it. I
yeah,
was
the
doing-
new calendar.
Yeah, the new calendar, that's great.
But
I won't say anything about the middle school unless anyone has a question.
Nope.
Okay. We're about 85% complete. Everything's going well. I think, if no other subcommittee reports, I think that's it. We don't need an executive session. I would take a
we have
motion.
policy next week.
That's right.
I mean, this week.
Tomorrow.
Thursday.
It's the 16th. right?
Thursday.
Yeah.
Thursday.
Oh, I just mentioned, Paul's not here, salary negotiations met this afternoon, and we have begun negotiations with the custodians and the bus drivers, and we have received notification from the teachers that they would like to begin negotiations on a successor contract. And that's where we are on that.
And we got so much email in the last month about this field test for park that
Oh.
I think we're going to collapse under the weight of carrying the folders around. The preparations for it and the communications.
Not from the parents, I thought you meant from the parents.
No,
from
this
park.
is from park, but with the authorization of DEFE that we're doing the field test. So interestingly, tomorrow, we have our annual, monthly social superintendent's meeting, and our speaker for tomorrow happens to be the commissioner.
Ms. Chester?
And if everybody got the mailings, or the response to the mailings was like ours, it should be an interesting meeting.
Enjoy.
I move we adjourn?
Is there a
I'll
second?
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.